Hey, I'm Dave Watkins, Watkins Films. Now, I've been trying to review a few Thanksgiving movies, well, movies that take place during Thanksgiving or whatnot. I did Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and also Thanksgiving, the 2023 horror film. And yesterday I did one on Humans, which is a 2021 psychological drama that takes place at Thanksgiving. Now, today I'm also planning on doing another one. Maybe we'll see what happens. But there's not a lot of films that take place during Thanksgiving that good. Most films who have this type of Thanksgiving family type of vibe going on, they set them during Christmas because it's a bigger holiday. But the one we're going to talk about today is Home for the Holidays. And when they say holidays, they mean Thanksgiving. And maybe they called it Home for the Holidays. Maybe they thought they snag some Christmas viewers as well. But no, this one takes place at Thanksgiving. And this is a Shout Select. It is number 32 of the Shout Select line, and it is a Blu-ray. It's not a 4K, and we'll talk a little bit about the transfer here in just a bit. So the film was directed by Jodie Foster, and it was written by W.D. Richter. I think that's how you pronounce his name, but W.D. Richter also wrote and directed Buckaroo Banzai Across the Eighth Dimension, as well as he wrote Invasion of the Body Snatchers, the 1978 film with Donald Sutherland, and he also wrote or co-wrote Big Trouble in Little China. Now, Jodie Foster also had a lot of input on the script, and she also put some of her own experiences into the story. Now, this is a Thanksgiving story about a family that comes together for Thanksgiving, and then now this one, unlike the film Humans that we talked about yesterday, this one it does lean more towards comedy drama. It does have some drama in it, but it's not extreme comedy. It kind of keeps it somewhat real, even though there are a few parts to get a little broad with the comedy. But on top of all that, it is also a rom-com, so it has a romantic comedy aspect going, and really a lot of it works very good, and and oddly enough, it's really close to being like a classic rewatch type of movie, but it is held back in an odd way, and I can't quite put my finger on what doesn't make it work quite right. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that here in just a bit. Now, this is a 1995 film, and I remember when it just came out, and I think I saw it probably like a year or two after it was in the theater. I think I watched it on DVD. I probably rented it or something to that nature, and I can't believe it's been so long. I'm like, it was made in 1995. I could have sworn for some reason it was made during the 2000s at some point, but nope, 1995. Now, this film has an amazing cast. Holly Hunter plays the main character. Robert Downey Jr. plays her brother who's gay, and Anne Bancroft plays the mother. Charles Durning plays the dad, and it also has Dylan McDermott in it as the love interest, and a lot of other, like, there's Steve Guttenberg's in it as well. Now, Steve Guttenberg, he was the main character in the first couple of Police Academy films, and he was kind of big there for a while during the 80s, but I guess by the time he got to 1995, he was doing more supporting stuff. It has a lot of character actresses in it as well, like Geraldine Chaplin and Cynthia Stevenson, and Claire Danes has a small part in it as Holly Hunter's daughter. So let's go ahead and get into the plot a little bit. Holly Hunter's character, named Claudia Lawson, she is working in Chicago. She lives in Chicago in the city, and she works there, and she also lives there with her daughter. And these are things we find out. But she is kind of in a bad way in the city, where she loses her job. She does restorations on painting for an art place that has a government funding. It looks like the funding's being pulled, so she loses her job there. And then after that, she goes, and she talks to her daughter, Claire, played by Claire Danes, and she drops her off at the airport, and then the daughter reveals to her that she's dating this guy, and they're about to have sex and all that. And so she's kind of in a bad way, and so she gets on the plane, and she decides to call her brother, played by Robert Downey Jr., and he apparently wasn't planning on coming to this Thanksgiving Day celebration with the family. But she calls him and she said she really needs him to be there, and she leaves a really dramatic message on his answering machine. But she gets home, and the way that the film progresses is you meet parts of her family slowly. You get to the house and you meet her mom, played by Anne Bancroft, and her dad, played by Charles Durning. The two are still very playful with each other, and so they had this fairly interesting characters. And then they even dance in the kitchen and stuff like that. So later that night, in the middle of the night, Robert Downey Jr.'s character shows up with a guy with him. Robert Downey Jr.'s character is gay, but he's been dating this other guy for a long time. But now all of a sudden he shows up with another guy played by Dylan McDermott. And so it's kind of like, what's going on with this? So that happens, and then the next day, more family members start to arrive. They have to go and pick up the mom's sister, played by Geraldine Chaplin, and she is kind of she's a fairly interesting character. It seems like she's really kind of losing it mentally, and she's kind of got an oddness going on about her. Like she does things like pass gas in the car, and she's getting out of the car, and she flashes flashes Robert Downey Jr.'s character maybe by mistake. Like she looks down and sees her underwear under her dress and stuff. So she's a little bizarre. She doesn't seem to have all of her faculties anymore. But she's interesting. She seems to be having a fun time playing this character. During all this time, Holly Hunter's character is spending a lot of time with her brother and his friend, played by Dylan McDermott, and she's kind of she's kind of not liking him, or she's acting like she doesn't like him, even though she is attracted to him. But she thinks that he's a potential suitor for her brother, and she's also very annoyed that her brother dumped or isn't with his other boyfriend who she's used to. It doesn't seem like Holly Hunter's character Claudia comes home very often, but her parents are really happy to see her. But later on, the next day on Thanksgiving, her sister shows up, played by Cynthia Stevenson, and with Steve Guttenberg, who plays her husband. And she is they're both very uptight, and they're done almost in a lot of the comedy from the film comes from this, like her sister being so uptight and being so like snooty, and Steve Guttenberg's character being very similar to that, and they're just like kind of like, they seem to be up their own asses in a way, but there's a deep resentment, a deep family resentment. Like her sister has been living in this town with her family all her life, where Holly Hunter's character is left and gone on adventures, and she doesn't take care of her parents. Cynthia Stevens' character really resents that, and she's very like, and she thinks she has to do everything. But then Holly Hunter's character at one point mentions, like, you really don't have to. I mean, we've got this, and we can do this too. But at the same time, she's a very neurotic. Cynthia Stevens' character is a very neurotic female character, and her husband kind of follows suit with that, and they don't like Robert Downey Jr.'s character or Holly Hunter's character, because they feel like those guys just flew the coop, and they've been stuck with dealing with everything. So a lot of stuff happens to them specifically, and it is played for laughs. But there is a scene later, which we'll talk about, that isn't so much. But there's a very long sequence in the middle of the film that's Thanksgiving dinner, and it goes on for quite a lot happens during this sequence, and it works in a way, but it's a little too chaotic, and it seems like all these things that happen needed to happen, but they could have been spread out in different parts of the script. It didn't all have to be like one big bang. I was reading about the sequence, and apparently it took them 10 days to shoot the Thanksgiving dinner sequence in where it's not really dinner. I guess you maybe call it dinner, but it's really in the middle of the day, so it's like it's lunch or whatnot. But some people call it dinner. I've heard people call it dinner. I'm not sure where that comes from. But apparently they went through a lot of turkeys to do this sequence. Now there's some pretty big gags that happen with the turkeys. Some reason none of the guys at the table know how to carve a turkey. It's like, or like Steve Guttenberg's handed the knives, and he just sits there and he's about to cut it, but he can't do it because he gets caught up in his own conversation. He starts talking, and then he's like forgets to cut the turkey. Robert Downey Jr.'s character takes over at one point there's 2 turkeys, and he starts trying to cut it, and he's kind of going like almost like a little ridiculous with it, like some Ace Ventura stuff or something. I don't know. He's kind of being a little goofy with it. Finally, he starts kind of cutting it right, and he gets most of it cut off, and it was near the end of it. he accidentally slides the whole turkey off the table and it lands on the neurotic sister, and like turkey stuff gets all over and she like just loses her shit. And it's pretty hilarious part. It's a little over the top maybe, but it's pretty damn funny. Really, this movie is it is kind of messy in a way throughout, and I think it's really weird because it has a very strong potential for being greatness, and it's like I think there is this ensemble actors. It's an amazing cast. At some points they don't quite know what to do with everybody, and it's a very, I think the sister character played by Cynthia Stevenson, her coming in later doesn't help. It could, but then that character should have been established a little bit earlier, I think. Now, but there's a very kind of bittersweet type of scene near the end where Holly Hunter's character goes to the sister's house to apologize to her or talk to her about what was going on, and she's on her treadmill and she just doesn't want to talk, and Holly Hunter's character says, I don't know when's the next time I'm going to be here. We need to talk about this. And her sister's like, no, I'm not doing it right now. And so sometimes, like, it is Thanksgiving here, and she's probably not going to be back. But her sister just isn't going to be part of this, and she's not going to like try to accept her apology or even engage. She just tells her to leave, and then this is the only time in her day that she's happy. Very unhappy character, and it's maybe a situation where she may regret that later on. Her sister leaves, but maybe not. I think it's an important scene as the audience with Holly Hunter's character here. She's the main character, so you kind of follow her, and you're kind of on board with what she's doing. She seems to be. It starts the movie out in a bad place. We're losing her job and all this other stuff, and she's in a bad spot. But as she gets to her family's house, and she seems to be really enjoying the company, especially of Dylan McDermott's character, who, by the way, ends up not being Robert Downey Jr.'s boyfriend. Robert Downey Jr. brought him there because he was trying to hook him up with his sister, But she's enjoying it, and it kind of becomes kind of lighthearted. She's having a good time meeting this guy and kind of feeling life. It's sometimes and that's something about when you're with somebody new, around somebody new like that. It is kind of like a very, very, like, you really feel like you're living during that time of your life. I guess your dopamines kick in more, and it really feels like you're more alive and you're more happy because you're doing something new. But at the same time, her sister's been there, and her sister's like this other sister's never there. And so as a movie viewer, you're kind of on Holly Hunter's character's side. But if you really think about it, she is kind of maybe the villain. Not really a villain. I wouldn't say anybody's a villain in this. But in the scene, the sister, Cynthia Stephens' character, looks like a real bitch. But if you think about what she's gone through, and then the other sister just swoops in. She lost her job. She swoops in and her parents' favorite daughter, because she's a more likable daughter than the other one. The other one's all uptight and neurotic. But she's not, not a villain, but she isn't necessarily the good guy. And she doesn't quite understand why the sister resents her the way that she does. But there's really not going to be any fixing that. The only thing that's probably might fix that is time. And maybe eventually they may be okay with each other, but maybe not. Sometimes, even though they are family, it just doesn't work out like that. Like Robert Downey Jr.'s got another family of all people who are on board with him being homosexual. Not that the parents here, they don't seem to be like against it so much, but he doesn't feel that comfortable around the family. He feels more comfortable around his people or his now his husband and all their friends. They'd rather be there than be here than have him be here with the family. Now, a little bit about Charles Durning's character. There's some pretty good scenes between him and Holly Hunter's character, especially near the end. There's a scene where he's kind of watching some old films of the kids when they were younger, and he has a pretty good talk with her. Something that was kind of stuck out in the conversation. He talks about how he's looking at these old videos when he was younger and the kids were younger, and he feels like this seems like a different person than the person I am now who did all these things, and now I'm just watching it. So that's a kind of touching scene, and it's fairly thought provoking, I think. Anyway, so this is a decent Thanksgiving movie, one of the best Thanksgiving movies since there's not a lot of them out there. I think something doesn't quite gel right, but this was better. It was better upon this time watching it than I remembered it the last time. I did quite enjoy it. Now I did watch it directly after watching Humans, and so this movie is very artistic and it's very, very kind of cold feeling. This one feels a lot more alive. There's a lot more, and that's the thing about this film. There is a lot of energy in it, maybe too much. Robert Downey Jr. is like friggin' wired, but he does bring a lot of energy to it. So there's a lot of energy to it, and but there's also a good romantic chemistry between Dylan McDermott and Holly Hunter. And Holly Hunter is great in this film. And Jodie Foster's direction is spot on. So let's go take a quick look here. I don't know if there's anything crazy gonna happen here, but it looks like, okay, so we got the disc, which is one disc, and it's a Blu-ray. But here you have all the family members in a line here, and that's the cool thing about this. It really is the ensemble really makes it. And I'm not quite sure if I can't quite put my finger on it. It might just be that it's not very focused. Why it doesn't work out all the way, but I think it does work, but it's not, something's missing. But anyway, I'm going to go ahead and rate the film. I'm going to rate it 3.5 stars. I do like it, and I'll watch it again at some point. I do, maybe not next Thanksgiving, but maybe the one after that or so forth. Shout Studios did a pretty good job with this as well. I'm going to give the packaging here 3.5. I do like, I've been collecting these, not all of them, but I do have a lot of the Shout Selects. This one is a Blu-ray, and there's not a new transfer or anything to that nature. There's a lot of film grain here in this, and especially in the darker areas of the film. You do see a lot of heavy grain, which may be somewhat distracting. It doesn't look horrible, but it could use a little bit of help if there was a 4K transfer, maybe like I don't know if you necessarily clean it up, but it could use a little bit of work anyway. Well, let me know what you think about this film if you've seen it before, and if you haven't done so already, if you go ahead and like this video, subscribe to my channel. I'm Dave Watkins. Thanks for watching.